Okay, so left-wing bias in the press is not just on cable television and network television. It's in the internet big time. Apple News, Google News, Yahoo, and others. There is a study, okay, put out by a group called All Sides, which I just learned about. Interesting group. And they studied three of the big ones where people go for information. The first is Google News. 1% of the articles that you read on Google News are from right-leaning outlets. 73% are from left-leaning. Apple News, 2% of articles you read are from right-leaning outlets, 50% left-leaning. And finally, Yahoo News, 2% of the articles you read on Yahoo, right-leaning outlets supplied them, 53% are from left-leaning outlets. Now, why should we care? Joining us from Ebensburg, Pennsylvania, is Julie Mastrini, the Director of Communications and Bias Ratings for All Sides. So why should I care about this? I can see the left-wing bias on television for myself. Why do I need to go to Google and Apple and all of these things to reinforce that?
Well, the thing is that a lot of Americans, when they're using these news aggregation apps, they likely think that they're getting a broad view because the aggregators have the appearance of curating from various media outlets. So what we did at All Sides is we applied our 2,400 media bias ratings to see if these aggregators are really balanced. And they're not, most of them are on the left. Most of these news aggregators, especially the big ones like you just highlighted, Google, Apple, Yahoo, really when you're using those apps, you are mostly seeing news from left-leaning or left-rated media. And the danger of that is that it just gives you the appearance of getting a broad view when really you're ensconced inside a filter bubble. You're not getting diverse views. And then how are you going to be able to think for yourself, right? So, Bill, you might be aware of the left-wing bias in the press, but other Americans, they might not be. They might be thinking that they're just getting down the road news, down the middle news. And that's not the case.
So I go to Yahoo News, for example. I go there and I want to learn about Pope Leo and his stance on just war and Iran. So I just punch up Pope Leo, right? I just punch it up. And then what you're telling me is that the coverage of Pope Leo would be put out almost 100% by left-wing media people. Do I have it?
Well, close. We did do an analysis of Google search. So when you put in a specific search term like you just described, what types of media outlets are being returned? Now, we did that during 2024, during the election cycle, and we found that Google search results were 68% biased to the left for terms like Harris News, Trump News, election news, that sort of thing. Now, we didn't do the same analysis for Yahoo. For Yahoo News, what we did is we just looked at whenever you go to yahoonews.com and you're looking at what's aggregated there, what do you see? Like how many articles are coming from the left AP or lean left New York Times or lean left CNN versus Fox News on the right. So that's really what we were measuring with our news aggregator analysis.
Do these articles, does Yahoo and the others identify where they're from?
No, and that's the thing. They're not transparent about the perspective that these outlets are coming from, which is why All Sides
it gets spit out as fact?
Yeah, and that's why All Sides exists. We make the bias of these media outlets transparent because we think Americans deserve to know what angle the news is coming from so that they can make an informed decision themselves about what they think.
Okay, so this is the big thing now. It's going to overcome cable and network news. it's probably already done that. I mean, my YouTube operation has just skyrocketed into the millions. But it's me, and people know it's me. And so if you're going to consume it, you have a kind of a basis of fact that here's O'Reilly, and this is what O'Reilly has done in his career. People understand that. But the anonymous articles, the articles where you don't know who's writing them or how they got there, this kind of exposition or fact-finding, whatever you want to call it, this is going to be in the future really what Americans depend on to get information, correct?
Well, right now, Google News, Apple News, they have in the tens of millions of daily users. So people are really relying on these apps, these news aggregation apps, to get the rundown of current events. But the trouble is that it can be very sinister and even manipulative if these big tech companies are only showing people news from one side. So they really have a decision to make. You know, do they believe they have a civic responsibility to help Americans get a broad view and think for themselves? Or do they essentially want to be one-sided propaganda outlets that are just showing people news from one side? And, you know, and I can explain how we come up with these bias ratings because it's actually very interesting and based on surveys of Americans and panels of experts.
Okay. Well, we trust that all sides is doing the research the way it should be done. But my point is now it's almost to the overwhelming. On the left, they are dominating the messaging in America by using the apps. And then in combination, they've got 3 out of the 4 cable networks, and they have all 3 of the network, the traditional networks. So it's a dominant information flow to the left in this country. Am I wrong?
I would say that you're right. If you're looking at the major cable networks, most of them we rate lean left or left. And then also, if you're using these new news aggregation apps, you're mostly going to be seeing content from left-leaning and left media. So there is a left-wing narrative dominance in that respect. And it really is the case that the news on the right is more buried. You know, like you said, Apple, you know, most of these news aggregators, they're curating less than 10% of news from outlets on the right. So that's a really small percentage. And Google and Apple.
And the decision to do this was made, we assume, by the executives who run these operations. We assume that they wanted to do that. So that's how they set it on up.
They're very aware of our analysis, you know, and they kind of seem to be denying that it's a problem and downplaying the problem. And you know, we're just bringing this to light so that Americans can understand that if they rely on one of these aggregation apps, they might not be getting a balanced, well, they're not getting a balanced view.
Well, if you get booked by CBS, ABC, NBC, or CNN, you let me know right away. Because they're certainly not going to put you on the air to tell everybody this. Final question, AI. So AI is going to sweep in, and you're going to be able to get the same access that you get now, but it's going to be a more vivid display of information driven by artificial intelligence. Do you expect the fix will be in the same way it is in now?
I mean, AI is it's already starting to transform the news industry. We know that media outlets are using AI. Often it's not very transparent that they're using AI. Sometimes they're not very public about the ways that this is, you know, being fed into their news content. So, you know, we're really focused on media literacy. We want there to be transparency, and we're going to, you know, continue to develop tools that, you know, without saying that we're going to not use AI to, you know, help with our work, right? It's not really a technology we want to totally shun, but we also want people to be able to understand when it's being used, where it's being used, and how it might contribute to bias. We actually
that'll be interesting to see because it's a lot cheaper for news organizations to use AI than regular human beings. And that's what's going to happen. They're going to be, you know, putting this electronic stuff out there with very little supervision because they don't want to pay a couple of $100,000 in health and salary to a human being. All right, Julie, very good. I'm glad I could bring this to everybody's attention. And if you have any other good stories, please let us know right away, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you, Bill.